I realized what my weapons were capable of in the wrong hands, I shut it down, stopped manufacturing.
Tony, you chose to do that. If we sign this, we surrender our right to choose. What if there's somewhere we need to go and they don't let us? We may not be perfect, but the safest hands are still our own.
If we don't.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and it's time to try and save another character. I don't know if we're saving the team of the Avengers this week, but let's try and fix it. It feels like, with a team-up book, these things can be righted a lot easier maybe than solo books or maybe some type of family titles. We decided, last week we talked about Wally West. Before that, we talked about Captain Marvel. Mm-hmm. We decided to tackle the Avengers, which has really been one of the frustrating reads at Marvel Comics for a couple of years now. It started out pretty decent under Jason Aaron. The first couple story arcs were pretty okay. War of the Realms came in. It felt like it derailed the series, and it never came back on track. Right now, we just finished up that Age of Khonshu story, which I thought was abysmal, and it feels like this Phoenix tournament is even worse. Just in my humble opinion. And here to talk with me about the Avengers, maybe some of the issues that you would have to address it if you wanted to fix the team, and maybe some of the things that we would do to right the ship as far as the Avengers go, is award-winning editor, independent writer, Joe Corallo. How are you doing?
I'm all right, Wes. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's always good when I get you on here. We can talk about some nerd stuff, delve into some histories. Maybe there's some of the times where they fell off the rails as far as the Avengers go.
Sure.
Obviously, the Avengers is the premier team-up book. I guess X-Men maybe is the franchise, but they're two of the premier team books in all of comic books. Have a wonderful history. Now, originally, Fantastic Four was supposed to be Marvel's answer to the Justice League. Obviously, that ended up being more of a family book. And then I guess the production schedule was off, and they had an opening, and Jack Kirby and Stan Lee fast-tracked the first issue ever of the Avengers. It wasn't really supposed to be a series, and it's been with us ever since. I think it debuted the same month as X-Men. So it's been around a long time.
Yeah, and before we really jump in, since as you mentioned Jason Aaron, like, if you, viewer, love this current Avengers run, if you think this is the best the Avengers have ever been, that's okay. We might not agree with you, and that's fine. And this is nothing personal to Jason Aaron. We're not trying to run him out of the business or anything. We are just talking about a situation that's more complicated than any one writer or editor. It took a long time to get to this point, and we have some idea on the history of the Avengers and having read these comics. So stick with us, hear what we have to say. But if you don't agree, that's fine.
Yes, we don't have to agree on everything for us to be friends and to talk comic books.
Yeah, but the Fantastic Four, like you were saying, came up as a way to push back against the success of the Justice League, but really ended up being just the Challengers of the Unknown, which Jack Kirby created in 1957. There's a lot of evidence to show that, from exact pages being replicated to the changes from Stan's original pitch to what ends up being on the page made it more in line with Challengers of the Unknown. There was originally going to be Sue Storm was supposed to wear like a mask and
because she was going to be invisible 24/7.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So things like that. But yeah, you look at the costume designs, everything. It's just the Challengers of the Unknown. And then the Avengers is really when they, decided okay, let's just take what they're doing with Justice League. And here is where they stuffed a bunch of characters they had no idea what the hell to do with. Particularly the Hulk. They never really knew what to do with the Hulk. They created this character. Stan liked the idea of this Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of character, but had no idea of what really to do with him. Was canceled pretty early on. Would find success later on, but was brought into the Avengers, which is funny because they would then again not know what to do with the Hulk, and the Hulk would be out of he would be out of the Avengers pretty quickly. But you had these characters that weren't really getting huge traction, like Ant-Man, the Wasp, and Iron Man and Thor. And then by issue 4, they really bring it together by reintroducing Cap after Fantastic Four reintroduced Namor, and in a way, you know, the Human Torch. You know, obviously Johnny Storm is not the original Human Torch, but they were mining these Golden Age characters and, you know,
incorporating them into this new Silver Age of Marvel, which is essentially the foundation of Marvel Comics as we know it.
Absolutely, yeah. So we get this with the Avengers. This was never like Jack or Stan's favorite books. Like Stan, I think, is off this book by like issue 30. Jack, I think, is off by like issue 16. Like they get off this book pretty quick. Similarly to the X-Men, it was another book they did not really click with and were off pretty quickly. And you know, Roy Thomas would go on to have a long run on the Avengers. You know, you'd get Steve Englehart, who created the modern day, what we think of as a crossover event. Steve Englehart created that with the Avengers Defenders War because he was writing both books. And it was easy for him to do it because he was like, I can just do this because I'm, you know, working on both books. And Marvel pushed back at him at the time saying no one's going to buy a crossover event.
Whoops.
And yeah, right. So that ended up obviously changing, you know, changing everything forever, you know, and that's a great story too. That's collected individually in like trades, but it's also part of the Avengers Volume 4 omnibus, which I think also has the Kree Skrull War is also in that omnibus. So even though some of the earlier ones are out of print, you can pick that up and get two of the most important Avengers stories. You know, and the book never ended up getting to be like the most popular thing that everyone talked about, but it was steady, which is kind of where Justice League ended up going.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, you'd get into the 80s. DC kind of fell into this, I think, quicker than Marvel, because you'd get Justice League International after Crisis, and it was a lot of like the B-listers on the team, which is kind of where Avengers went a little later than that. I'd say like in the late 80s, maybe early 90s is when it really started to become like the B-lister team. There were a lot of B-listers on the team regularly, like Hercules and, you know, characters like that, but it really, Black Knight, but really started slipping into, you know, the B-leaguers until you got to, you know, Heroes Reborn in 98, where you had Kurt Busiek and George Perez bring all the A-listers back and have that successful run. And then, you know, you'd have Bendis make it sad and miserable by having the Scarlet Witch go insane and murder, you know, and Hawkeye gets killed, and it's a horrible string of events, you know, but that kind of goes for a while. Eventually we got to, you know, the Hickman Avengers. Now we're at the Jason Aaron Avengers.
It's been an interesting road. Everyone gets their own Avengers team. There's been so many teams. You've had your offshoots, your West Coast Avengers, your Great Lake Avengers. Right now you got Savage Avengers. So you always have like another team normally, like a secondary Avengers team. But so I personally feel like right now and maybe long term, these are kind of the three obstacles that I've seen with the Avengers that you would have to overcome in order to fix it. Like currently the team is Captain Marvel, Black Panther, She-Hulk, Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, Doctor Strange, and Robbie Reyes, Ghost Rider.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little bit of redundancy, obviously, with Captain America and Captain Marvel. Which one is supposed to be the military strategist? Which one is supposed to lead the team into battle? And it kind of causes confusion. Like, you don't need both characters. I also think it's weird that you have Doctor Strange and Ghost Rider on an Avengers team. They're more mystical kind of characters. You could probably make a mystical Avengers team, and they would probably be more suited for that. You know, it doesn't feel like those characters absolutely belong in like an Avengers team. So I think currently this construct is a little bit of redundancies. There's some oddities in there. The biggest problem I do think is the Captain Marvel versus Captain America like dynamic. You probably don't need both of those. And then there's also a really weird dynamic between Tony Stark and Captain Marvel in that book where they seem to hate each other.
Yeah, and interesting fact too, when we're talking about these different kinds of Avengers teams, like Savage Avengers, uh, Dan Abbott and Andy Landing, when they were doing Guardians of the Galaxy, little ways back before the announcement of the movie and all that, they approached Marvel about how the sales could be improved, and they wanted to call it Cosmic Avengers because that would have boosted sales, because at the time no one really knew what Guardians of the Galaxy were. And Marvel pushed back, telling them, we're not watering down the Avengers line. We can't just slap Avengers on books to make it sell.
Interesting.
Yes, it's
no longer.
it's weird how many examples there are of Marvel and DC and basically everyone in the business going like, we absolutely can't do that, to how are we not doing that? It's pretty incredible.
Obviously, the biggest one being, it would be the biggest mistake in the history of comics if they ever brought Jason Todd back. The people spoke.
Yeah, that's a great one. I love that one. It's like when you printed on the first printing of your trade paperback of that Denny O'Neil quote. But
absolutely,
no, it's great. And for the longest time, it used to be like the only characters who stay dead are, it was like Ben Parker, Gwen Stacy, and Bucky, and two of those three are we can't get rid of them. You can't get rid of Gwen Stacy and Bucky Barnes at this point.
Absolutely. So, do you have any thoughts on like the redundancy on the team? Do you think obviously you can have an Avengers team with a Captain Marvel and a Captain America, but do you need it?
I don't think so. I think a stripped down team, or you could do arcs where you have you focus on maybe 5 members of the Avengers and you rotate. They did a good job with some of this stuff, like what was it, Secret Avengers, where they kind of had a bit of a rotating team where they'd focus on different missions with different characters. Warren Ellis had a really cool, it was like a 5 or 6 issue arc in that I really enjoyed at the time. There are ways to do this, but you can, if you're going to have like a flagship book, you have a flagship Avengers title with A-listers that are going to get you to buy the books, and then you have ancillary books and rotating casts and things like that to support it.
Yeah, so I do think the current roster it's not completely flawed, but it could be tightened up and be it could be better, in my opinion. Sure. Now, the next obstacle is more of a long-term thing that's happened, and it certainly hit critical mass under Hickman's run on the Avengers, where you had like 40 Avengers. It was absolutely ridiculous. I believe under the Marvel Now time, it was the absolute B-list Avengers. It was all these young teenage characters with a couple of mainstay characters. Not everybody in the world, in the Marvel Universe, should be an Avenger. Maybe they can help out every once in a while if their talents warrant it in the story arc. But I think you need to keep the club of Avengers characters kind of exclusive. Don't water it down so much. That way it feels like when you have the mantle of being the leader of the Avengers or a long-standing member of the Avengers, it feels like something. It should be special that Monica Rambeau was the leader of the Avengers. But because they've watered it down so much, it's not even a big achievement anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you get the tension built in from stuff like that, where you have multiple teams. Like, let's say you do Avengers and then you do Avengers West Coast or West Coast Avengers, and maybe Captain Marvel's the leader of one team and Captain America's the leader of the other, and then every once in a while there's an event or something where they're both involved in, or like just a crossover. Wouldn't it be quaint if there were more just interbook one-in-one book crossovers and they weren't these like giant webs? But if you did something like that and you had like Captain America pushing back at Captain Marvel or something like that, like, oh, what you did was reckless, and then like that kind of stuff, that would be fun to have something like that. But yeah, the way it's done right now, when you have too many characters on a team like that, it's doable, if you really focus on just a few, you know, like I mentioned, like if they were all like living in like an Avengers complex, and you have one arc that really focuses on a few, and then you know, move it around and reintroduce people. But you know, otherwise it ends up getting muddied really quickly when you do it that way.
Yeah, it just waters down the team too much. And the last thing I have to talk about, and we're definitely going to hit on this the most, because this is the biggest problem with the Avengers comic book in today's climate of comics. There are so many events at Marvel, and every one of them is an Avengers level threat.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Empire going on. You know, you've got the King in Black going on right now, and the 5 or 6 or maybe 10 events that we're going to get in 2021 are all going to be Avengers level threats because they keep having to up the game. You know, you can never have like an Avengers story where, you know, their arch nemesis take over Avengers Mansion and they have to go and fight for it back, because the stakes would never be high enough again for that to warrant like the Avengers attention now. So almost the Avengers series itself as an ongoing is superfluous within the Marvel Comics universe due to the sheer volume of event titles. And if you're writing the Avengers title and Empire comes up, you have to derail whatever you were working on towards in that event, that Avengers series. Maybe it's, you know, your Dracula story or whatever that Jason Aaron was doing, and you have to go hit that Empire thing, because it would be ridiculous for the Avengers not to show up, and it would also be equally ridiculous if that Avengers series didn't tie into it.
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at this, you know, we go from Empire to King in Black to Heroes Reborn, and that's all within a year, basically, of these events, one after the other. And that's not including the smaller, just within the title events, like Enter the Phoenix and this like Phoenix tournament now. So everything is the greatest threat the Avengers have ever faced. Constantly. 2 alien invasions back to back.
Yeah.
A 3rd alien encounter with the Phoenix. So that's like 3 alien invasion-ish stories all in a row, followed by a, you know, reality-changing event. It's like, that's ridiculous.
And the Avengers were in Iron Man 2020.
Mm-hmm. No, it's way too much. I mean, it's so quaint when you go back, like even like, you know, Under Siege, where Baron Zemu's son uses a new Masters of Evil to take over the Avengers Mansion. It's this, the stakes are still high because the Avengers are at risk, but it's so low in the grand scheme of things. It's just affecting the Avengers. You know, the mansion gets destroyed as a result.
Jarvis almost dies, I believe.
Yeah, Jarvis almost dies. Hercules almost dies. Moonstone gets her neck broken. Like, some serious stuff. Baron Zemo is critically injured. It's all major high-stakes stuff. You can make that stuff important without relying on the whole world is going to change forever from this reality-bending alien invasion of the most powerful thing that's ever existed ever. You don't need that. You just need to tell a good, compelling story with characters you care about. You know, Under Siege couldn't happen today because it's not enough, but it's like, I cared more about what was happening in there than anything Avengers related I've read in a very long time.
And it's not just, this isn't just a Marvel problem. If you go back to Scott Snyder's run on Justice League, which I think a lot of people like, but in the very first issue, the moon is destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how many people would like die? Like the amount of effects on the earth that would happen if the moon was destroyed? That is an enormous event to start off your comic book. Mm-hmm. And you come over to the Justice League with Jason Aaron's run, and the first thing is you've got like all these like carcasses of cosmic beings falling to earth, and there's this, it's like, where do you go from there, man? It's like,
no, it's true though.
That should be the destination, right?
But people, like, the problem is people have gotten to that destination in other runs. So now people feel like, oh, I got to start there, and then I got to make it even bigger. And then we got to find out that Galactus is the herald for a bigger thing, and then that bigger thing is a herald for a bigger thing, and that is a herald of, you know, it's like, this is like a herald of like universe eaters, and then there's a herald of time eaters, you know, and it's just stop. We're losing, you know, relatability. The Avengers aren't relatable anymore. They used to have a mansion where they would like hang out in the city. They take public transportation. People used to be able to protest in front of the Avengers mansion. Reporters used to talk to them. And now everything is like insane cosmic reality bending stuff. And it's so alien and unrelatable to anyone reading it.
Yeah, it would feel weird if Tony showed up with a coffee, be like, man, this is the best cup of coffee I've ever had. Like, how do you have time to get coffee? Sir, the entire world is in jeopardy again.
Yeah,
there's no time for levity in the story or to ground the characters and build them up, you know, as a family or a unit.
But Tony has been like an AI for years at this. So he's not like, yes. I'm a human. Am I? I don't know. Maybe I am again. I'm not. Like, it's an insanity. You know, like how, but yeah, everyone's doing that. And then no one makes any sense. And they all talk like crazy people. Like, I read Avengers 43 for this. And as much as I really don't like this at all, Corey Pettit lettered it. And I love Corey Pettit. He's a great guy. He's been lettering comics at Marvel for almost 2 decades. I think one of the first gigs he got was lettering the Daredevil Bendis run. So he's an old pro. He's great. Support Corey Pettit books. This is terrible though. I don't know how people read this. You know, you have Wolverine using modern day vernacular when he's talking, and I don't know if you know, you, Wes, or people listening have ever met someone who was, you know, hundreds of years old, or, you know, like if you meet someone over like 60, do they just go right into using like modern colloquialisms and just talk like everyone else? That's not like a thing. It's not.
If they do it, you normally laugh because it feels so strange.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, and it's like Wolverine having that talk, you know, and him and Black Panther going at it, and they just sound like idiots.
Yeah, who's metal stronger, vibranium versus adamantium? It was like, oh, sweet, like.
And then, you know, Valkyrie with the whole like, I'm the strongest Valkyrie
ever.
It's like, people, like, you wouldn't say that, and then heroes don't talk like that.
Yes.
You know, unless, you know, maybe if she was fighting a villain.
Yes.
You know, you say something like that if the villain's like taunting and trying to tear you down and being like, you know, you're the weakest Valkyrie I've ever met. You know, like, yeah, okay, but like, this is like, what the hell? And then before we even started recording, yeah, I think you mentioned that they've all seen the Phoenix so many times before. Why are they getting involved in this? Why would any of them want this power? You know, yeah. The Avengers dealt with this in Avengers versus X-Men, which I quit reading by like issue 7 after they found that myth of like, there's an ancient warrior that can punch the Phoenix to death. I was like, I'm done. This sucks. But it
officially went too stupid.
You know, but this is like the same thing. And I appreciate.
It feels like there's a level of free will among the combatants. Like they're like, you get out of here. The Phoenix Force is mine. It's like, why would you want this thing? You're going to end up destroying a planet, and they're going to have to kill you.
No, I do appreciate in this instance, at least, that it's in the core book, and they didn't create an event like Avengers versus X-Men.
Yes.
That I applaud the restraint of Marvel.
Well, it's leading into the Heroes Reborn a bit, but
sure.
It's the prelude to the actual bit.
but no, it was insane. It was like I don't know. I mean, it's the same thing as like, you know, you sit down, you enjoy a nice screening of like Superman 2, and then you're just like, oh, let me put on like, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, and you're just like, oh my God, what? That was so quaint, and now I'm in a nightmare world. Like
Batman's beating a man to death.
They're blowing up Congress. You're like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
Batman's beating Superman to death with a sink. You're just, oh my God. Yeah. But I felt like I was being beaten to death by a sink when I was reading Avengers 43. So that worked.
Yeah, this Phoenix story has been quite bad. And Jason Aaron has had very successful runs at Marvel, very successful runs in comic books. I just feel like he needs a breather from Marvel, but that's, I think people know that's how I kind of feel about Jason Aaron right now.
Absolutely. I've met Jason Aaron. He's great at cons and signings. He's so personable. He's great to fans. He's written some amazing comics. I love a lot of his, like creator-owned work. There was, I think Southern Bastards. I think he wrote that, and Jason Latour was the artist on that. I really like that series. He does really good stuff, but after a while you're stuck with these characters for so long. What else can you do? And it's also within the limits of what Marvel will let you do. Like there's a lot of factors in here, and I mentioned this a lot. You mentioned this a lot. Like I do not begrudge anyone for taking a paycheck. If he
had an idea. Marvel accepted the idea. They're editing it. Yeah. They're approving it.
Yeah,
they're part of it.
No one's forcing them to do this.
Absolutely. So, we've kind of talked about the history of the Avengers. What I personally think are some of the issues with the redundancy on the team. Probably need to streamline that a bit. Make the Avengers a little bit more exclusive. There's too many events that it makes the series almost feel superfluous. Is there any other big issue with the Avengers that you can see on modern times that would need to be addressed if you wanted to fix it?
I do think just driving that point home a bit more is you do have to ground it a bit. It's gotten too crazy. You need to make them more relatable and more human and more like they actually need to be here protecting people. I think we forget that. Like they're so far, like they're basically fighting like aliens and philosophical, concepts. And it's way too far, and it doesn't feel connected to reality. It doesn't feel connected to people. It doesn't feel like they're fighting to help people anymore. Even
they're fighting to fill out a story.
Yeah, it's like they're fighting these like tournaments where, again, editorial. Come on, you just had the X of Swords, Ten of Swords tournament, and we go right into another tournament. Space these tournaments out. And there's X-Men in this tournament. If we can call them X-Men, I don't think it's the official team or we're allowed, whatever. But
X-persons.
Yes, X people. But what's going on here is it's so detached. I'm reading stuff like, Empire, King in Black, and it's like, it feels so disconnected from people. We're not seeing how this affects people. It makes me think of in one of the prelude issues to the death of Superman, one of the issues revolved around a house and you're talking to, this like mom and her kids and there's all this tension in this house. And then Doomsday, ends up destroying it and, is fighting Superman along the way. That connected this to real stakes that people can relate to and affects us. We've completely lost that in terms of Avengers and a lot of other comics. We've also lost that in DC. We've got Wonder Woman in space talking to celestials and gods, and it's like, how does this affect people? Connect this to people. Make me care about people. Yeah. And it's like it's so far removed from that.
I agree with that. So let's start to fix the Avengers. Now, me personally, I want a tight Avengers team. I don't want much overlap. So I'm going to start off with the trinity of Marvel Comics Avengers. I'm going to go Captain America is going to be your military strat leader, essentially the leader of the Avengers. Iron Man, obviously your technology-based hero, got the ability to fly, also a co-leader. certainly has a seat at the table when it comes to decisions. Thor would be your more mythological kind of character. Obviously, one of the more important ones there. He has an enormous power level, so you've got some muscle behind you. Also, you need a berserker character, a character when it hits the fan that's going to go absolutely nuts and maybe even the score for you. So we're going to go with She-Hulk.
Okay,
We'll go with Jessica Walters. We'll keep her on the team, and then I'm going to start changing things up. So I want somebody that's got some marksman-like ability, but isn't completely overpowered. So I'm going to go back to Clint Barton, Hawkeye. He also has a redundant capability where he might be able to do some reconnaissance, things like that, kind of fit into his wheelhouse. Also, to do a little bit of recon, but also add some dynamics to the team. Janet Van Dyne Wasp also kind of harkens back to the original Avengers team. And finally, here's my wild card. I want like an Oracle type character to help be like the operations specialist, the person behind the Avengers team that's kind of sitting there directing action, that's also doing some investigation, knows what's going on behind the scenes. And I'm going to bring in a relatively new character, Jessica Jones, to be my Oracle-like character and kind of build her up within the Avengers team. Obviously, she's been more street level in the past, but I think she could really serve that function within the team, and I think it would be a cool dynamic to add to them.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
All right, so there's my team. This is what I'm going to do with them because Marvel ain't going away with events. The events are going to keep flowing. I wanted to develop the characters and the relationships a bit more. Now, we will have like a yearly Avengers team-up event where the Avengers team goes out there because there's an Avengers threat. Otherwise, we'll see the Avengers as a team fighting all this, Empire, King in Black, and all these other things that are happening. But the Avengers book itself is going to kind of go back to, I believe it was in the 80s where they had these solo Avengers, and then it became Avengers solo title, where it's kind of like a team-up book. Maybe on this book, the Atlanteans are causing a problem in the Pacific. So we send off She-Hulk and Captain America to go deal with it. Maybe it goes south and Jessica Jones sends in Iron Man at the last minute to come and help them out. But it'll be like 2-3 characters max going out and solving some of these smaller issues around the world. You can see the character dynamics, them work together, ground them a bit more, and maybe learn about more of them as characters rather than fighting whatever the latest celestial being is that's decided to invade Earth.
Yeah, I mean, it's something. It's, again, it's like you're grounding it more. That's so important. And I know, we've mentioned this in other things too, but grounding these stories is going to be key at having them be something that can move forward.
And you can obviously lay the groundwork for the big event that comes up in issue number 12 or whenever you want to put it in. You can lay the seeds. Maybe they encounter somebody. They're like, who the hell was that? Maybe you see him another time. And then eventually you finally earn that moment where you get your big event. And you're like, well, this was just the Marvel's June event 2021 rather than feeling like something you've been moving towards.
Yeah, that works.
So that would be my thing. Obviously, it's not the most original idea. They did have something similar to this in the 80s. And I think Marvel team-up books are great. I love Marvel Team 2-in-1. I really like the team-up concept. Getting 2 characters that you don't always get to see interact with each other and go put them out there when their skill sets match the, obviously match the situation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's good stuff.
All right, so Joe, obviously I am a hack. I'm a schlub. I'm not an award-winning anything. You're an award-winning editor. If they said, Joe, we need you to come in and help fix the Avengers line, maybe we'll put you on as the editor, maybe the writer. Where would you start first? How would you do it?
They got to be accountable to like human beings again, like ground them. They're here to protect us, not like, and it doesn't feel like that's what they're there to do anymore. So you ground them, you make them based in a city again, like in New York City or something like that. It could be Chicago or
no more corpses of celestial beings like in the Antarctic.
No, I hate that stuff. Stop it. It's got to be a place where journalists can bother them, where people can protest, where people can really voice how they feel about what the Avengers are doing. They need to be interacting with people again. I would love to see them dealing with that and have other elements of the universe, like have Bernie Rosenthal be their attorney. You know, I would love having Cap as the leader of the team. You know, his old, you know, fiance Bernie Rosenthal as the lawyer. I'd love to see them bring some more obscure characters in, like the Diamondback, who is part of the Serpent Society, you know, Rachel, who, you know, ends up having a thing for Cap. Like, bring her in, bring a few more of those like side characters who've kind of gone in and out, who are also morally ambiguous. If you had someone like her and like Moon Knight on the team, who are a bit more, we don't know what they're going to do, and you know, they kind of got to rein them in. I would, you know, I'd obviously love to have, you know, like Iron Man and Thor on the team too. But yeah, it's got to be grounded. It's got to be a part of protecting people. You know, you can, you know, get some, you know, government involvement maybe. Like, there's ways to do it that aren't hacky, that, you know, can, you know, garner interest and make them relatable. I'd love to see like Dakota North on the team, or, you know, maybe they use North Securities, and you know, she has to, you know, her and her team are, you know, the bodyguards of the Avengers, and, you know, Bernie Rosenthal and stuff like that over the course of the series. But like build something that feels more permanent, that has a lot of room to grow, and stories that you can tell from.
Another thing I thought was possible, an idea, obviously we have the X-Men story going on where they're kind of separate in their own Colan society. Mm-hmm. Maybe again, an X-Men representative back onto the Avengers team. You know, since they do have some like interest, and maybe that could add another combustible element, as you have somebody with maybe a different allegiance. What are they going to kind of do, kind of thing? And that kind of integrates the entire Marvel universe together.
Sure, you know, and you could even do it in a way where it's like a character like Submariner, who's been on the team before, who is a mutant, runs his own country, but, you know, isn't really part of Krakoa. And, you know, you could do something there that's interesting with these like torn kind of allegiances. I do like the idea in general of shying away from characters like Black Panther and Submariner on the team, because I always find it weird when it's like, I'm the ruler of a country, but also I hang out in this mansion in Manhattan to fight crime. It's like, no, run your country. That's awful that you're doing this.
If there's 3 battlefronts going on with the Avengers that they need to go at, the most important one's in New York, where do you think Black Panther is going to go? He's going to go to Wakanda.
Yeah,
that's his nation. That's where his number one allegiance lies. Number one responsibility. So it is. I agree with you that it's kind of an odd place for him to be.
For sure, but like a character like Mystique on like the Avengers, that's great. You know, if you had like Mystique, Diamondback, and like Moon Knight, and a couple of like some characters like that on like a team where it's like, I don't know, you know, like if they should be here,
would be perfect.
Yeah,
because, you know, Charles is like, we got to get Mystique out of Krakoa. She won't stop talking about Destiny. We don't want to bring her back. We need you to be the special emissary to the X-Men. She goes over there, and I'll say, you know, 3 or 4 issues in, she starts feeling comfortable with the other members. Maybe she starts letting out a few secrets about Krakoa, and then they're like, they're doing what? What exactly is going on in Krakoa? What are the X-Men doing? This mutant nation maybe isn't so friendly, and you could really build some things up that way.
It could be really interesting, and Mystique's a fantastic character. I absolutely love Mystique. So
Charles has given her every reason of the world to turncoat and dime them out.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, those would be some really interesting ideas. Now I do want to mention a couple of creators that would be like my dream creators. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I'm not going to mention you on this one because I don't want to be too much of a homer on this.
No, of course.
Obviously, the biggest creator right now at Marvel, you know, they're kind of number one writer is Donny Cates. I think he would do a really good job on Avengers. He does build up to things. Obviously, he's been building up to this King in Black story for a couple years now. He does, he's written the Avengers, obviously, in his event books. I think he's done a good job. His Thor stuff, maybe not for everybody. I like a lot of it. Not loving the current story, but I think Donny Cates would be the guy to do it. But if you're going to ask me for a dark horse candidate, and Doc's going to kill me about this, I think Jerry Duggan, when he's not trying to be funny, writes a pretty damn good, exciting, a character-based team book. We've seen that in the Savage Avengers. I think he's done a wonderful job on there. Maybe elevate him up to the Avengers book and see what he could do with a little bit of a sleeker team, and see if he could get some more character dynamics going.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like that idea.
All right, Joe, do you have anything else that you want to say about the Avengers and fixing them, or maybe something else that you wanted to mention before we kind of start wrapping this up?
I mean, I also feel bad because I use this example another time, but I think Dan Abnett could do something interesting. With those
underrated
characters. One of the biggest problems with moving forward on this is one of the guys that I think would probably do the best job with like the direction I was talking about will never do it, and that's Ed Brubaker.
Yeah, that's too bad.
It's
but
really
he's such a great crime noir comic writer that I guess I get it. And he's got he's doing some shows and stuff like that on streaming. So
yeah,
I wish he'd do superheroes again. He's so good.
Yeah, I mean, if he did that kind of Avengers relaunch, it would be incredible. And yeah, it kills me that that we definitely
the very gritty Avengers story.
Yeah, I would love that. And it is the one thing where it's like, well, maybe if there was ever a way to get him back, it would probably be giving him the keys to something like, well, take the Avengers. What are you going to do with the Avengers? And we're going to be hands off, and you tell us what you're going to do. Might be one of the only ways to get him back, but I think he would crush it.
Yeah, it feels like the Avengers have been so cosmic lately. It's always these extra dimensional and like these enormous threats. Like something where it's more grounded in espionage and things of that nature, which we've certainly seen the Avengers. I think it would almost feel like a fresh take now.
Absolutely. It's very welcome. I would, I want that, more than anything, because I'm sick of how alien and unrelatable any of this stuff is anymore.
All right, Joe, I want to say thank you very much for your time trying to, kind of laying out some of the issues that the Avengers have had within comics. Obviously, it's a different story within the movies. Maybe how, identifying the problems, maybe how we would fix them. Really appreciate it. Always enjoy these conversations. Next week, we're going to do a DC character, maybe a DC team.
Yeah,
maybe we'll do Titans. Maybe we'll do the Titans.
Titans could use it. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Let's do Titans next week.
All right. Sounds good.